Hillary ain't never been called a nigger. Hillary has never had her people defined as non-persons. Hillary ain't had to work twice as hard just to get accepted by the rich white folk who run everything, or to get a passing grade when you know you are smarter than that C student sitting in the White House.
The Republicans are going to say, look at this. This is Barack Obama's pastor, and he's saying about all this thing about the whites control the U.S., and he's making it a us versus them thing. Now, I'm not sure that I wholly agree with Jeremiah Wright, right? Now, having said that, did white people control the United States of America? Of course they did. Of course they did. So, I mean, to say that that's not, I mean, that's just the truth of the matter, right? Jeremiah Wright's a little too worked up. It's going to get Obama in trouble. That's my take number one. Let me give you some other quotes from him. He says, at one point he said, the blacks should not sing God Bless America, but God Damn America. Oh, that's going to get him in a lot of trouble. Okay. And continuing, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, according to the blotter, Obama's pastor for the last 20 years at the Trinity United Church of Christ on Chicago's South Side, has a long history of what even Obama's campaign aides concede as, quote, inflammatory rhetoric, including the assertion that the United States brought on the 9/11 attacks with its own terrorism. Okay. You think they're going to use this against Obama? Of course they're going to use this. Like, oh, it's a radical black church. That's what they're going to say over and over and over. Here's my take on it. Okay. What people say in church is all crazy. Okay. You go to a white church, you go to an Asian church, I don't care what church you go to. They're in fantasy land. They say crazy stuff all the time. But since white folks are used to the crazy shit white preachers say, they find that perfectly normal. But when a black preacher says slightly crazy stuff, they go, oh, wait a minute, that's a radical, no, our voodoo's right, but his voodoo's a little off. I mean, yeah, it's Christian, so we're digging that, but, you know, when the Romans killing Jesus or whatever's happening there, yeah, I'm down with that. Right? You got to watch out for the Catholics and the Jews. But when he gets into this thing about the white folks, then he's coming after us. He's a radical black man. What the supposed real controversy is, when at one point in this speech you just heard, or the sermon you just heard, Reverend Wright says, Hillary ain't never been called, the N-word.
Hillary ain't never been called a nigger, he said.
Okay,
Hillary ain't never been called a nigger. That's what he said.
Thank you, Jared Jackson.
That's what Pastor Jeremiah Wright said. He said it, by the way.
Right. Thank you. Preach it. Anyway, so I don't see how that's controversial. She has it. That's it. I mean, when he says the word, you're like a little taken aback by it. But first of all, he's black, so he gets to say it. Second of all, Hillary hasn't been called that word. And I understand the point he's trying to make, which is that she hasn't lived the African-American experience. Now, I actually disagree with him because I think you can understand that experience without necessarily having lived it. I don't believe that you need to be in a certain identity to understand and empathize with an identity, right? And I think the Clintons, before this campaign started, did a pretty good job of empathizing with black folks in America, right? But when he says she hasn't lived it and she's never been called that word, of course he's right.
And you know what? If somebody says Barack Obama ain't never been called an irrational, hysterical person who needs to talk to you next week when she's off her rag, that's true too.
Yeah, and Hillary's gotten the worst of that.
Exactly.
I mean, she's gotten so much shit for being a woman, and Obama hasn't. So what are you going to do about that?
And if somebody says that about Obama, be like, you're right, he hasn't. What's your point? What does that have to do with what we're talking about again?
Yeah.
The question always needs to come back. So what does that have to do with what we're talking about again?